So yeah, to get started, I'll first start by introducing myself. I'm Janey Brown, and I am a singer, a performer, a wellness coach, and an entrepreneur. I have a business called Fierce Academy, and it provides a bunch of coaching to help people basically overcome fear or manage fear, particularly when putting themselves in front of audiences and increasing and enhancing their stage presence. Lots more to say about that, but that's kind of the gist of it. And I've also been involved with Blue Matter since 2013. I first took their training, I think it was maybe 2014, but I first took their training then, and then a few years later there was another training, retook it, and now I'm a faculty member of the HEAL training alongside Liz Vecchio. I think I nailed her name this time for once in my life, and Elizabeth Vecchio, I should say, and Erin Moore, who is a psychotherapist from Orlando. So that's my involvement with Blue Matter. I've led a workshop on here before, and this is my second workshop for Blue Matter within this quarantine. And before we get into all of the amazingness of Alex, Alex and I have been sort of, I think it was like 2 months ago or something like that, we started going live to have conversations in the community so that we could, we have conversations alone anyway to try and work through our struggles and our pain and our fear and whatnot. And we always have this sort of balanced and neutral approach in terms of how we support each other in these conversations. And so we just thought, why don't we just open this conversation up to the community? We're not showing up with answers for each other. We're just showing up as sounding boards. And so what's the harm in allowing other people to be sounding boards for us and us to be sounding boards for each other? So the Love Through Fear series is something that we've been doing for weeks now. And today's conversation is going to be based off of like probably our number one most demanded topic by our audience from Love Through Fear. But before I keep going down that road, let's focus on Alex. She's an incredible human being. I can't understand how this amazing person just magically appeared in my life out of nowhere, and how lucky I feel to have her presence and her knowledge and her wisdom a part of my life. Super, super grateful for that. So let me pass the mic to you so that you can explain in your own words sort of what you do and why you're such a superstar.
Oh my God, holy introduction. And also likewise about you coming into my life. I feel like you've helped me grow in so many ways. And so I'm really excited to be here. This is my first time doing anything with Blue Matter. I've only heard great things from Janey, so pumped to be here to talk to all of you guys today. But a little bit about me. I was a gymnast for 19 years. I competed on the national team for Canada and then was recruited to go to the United States and competed in the NCAA for 4 years. Within my athletic career, I worked with a sports psychologist for about 8 years, helping me deal with my fear of failure and fear of success and anxiety and all the kind of in between. And so that kind of sparked my passion for mindset, which wraps into the work that I'm doing now. I help athletes identify who they are beyond what they do. I also very much work with women on empowering themselves, and I get to work with amazing people like Janey, who also love to dive deep into the mindset of humans and how we can reach our full potentials by understanding and learning ourselves.
That was so well said. You just like took full ownership of your awesomeness, but not in a conceited way, just in a confident, honest way. And there's so much more I could comment on in terms of Alex's excellence and tenacity and resilience and all the wisdom that she's brought to my life. But for time purposes, because that could be a whole episode on its own, we'll move into why we're here. That was awesome. So as I mentioned before, Alex and I have started a series of conversations, we like to call them, called Love Through Fear. And simply the point of it is to show up, discuss challenging things, struggles, discomforts, fears, and try to find our way back to love within the fear and discomfort and struggles. And we like to remind everyone that we're not showing up today or on any of our conversations online with the answers. This isn't a lecture. This is a conversation that we want to bring to you with a very complex concept, which is highly misunderstood across the board. And it's also understood, but it's both misunderstood and understood. And so it's complex, and we want to just acknowledge that we don't have the answers. This isn't an expert session. This is us bringing a concept to light that we've thought a lot about and discussed a lot about, and found some insights that have been helpful to us that we want to share with you. And we encourage you to share insights with us that you found helpful. And of course, any questions that you may have that we might be able to speak to. So having said all that, today's discussion is on adaptability within uncertainty. And we called the session Be Like Water, partially connected to Bruce Lee's quote, which is be like water, which I can read to you guys later once we get into sort of what this all means. But the reason that we chose this subject, and I think the reason that this is so popular with our audience, is because uncertainty always exists. We as human beings have an amazing ability to create the illusion of stability and certainty within our jobs and our relationships and even our home life. But even when there's this sort of illusion of stability, people grow apart and relationships end. Disasters happen within home life. Business is ruthless, and you can't predict always sort of how, even in a secure job, how that's going to turn out. And a lot of us are seeing sort of the effects of that within COVID itself. So we believe that, uncertainty is certain. That's maybe the only thing that's certain, is uncertainty itself. And so it's like, okay, well, where do we go from here? How do we learn to adapt to uncertainty and sort of consistently, in the best way we can, prepare ourselves for uncertainty, or at least be better able to handle uncertainty, so that we can find more peace in our lives? And so we're going to discuss that concept today. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you just nailed it. And that was great. That was great.
Great. Great. Oh man. So we've just discussed that stability is rather an illusion. And we're going to talk about how we can build a healthy illusion of stability later on in this chat. But I think the first thing that sort of we would like to acknowledge here is that if uncertainty and sort of lack of stability is coming, if that's certain, then it doesn't make sense to fight against that, because that can create further suffering. And so our idea is to bring a sense of acceptance and non-resistance and surrender to the table. Now, I want to sort of mention that I understand that everyone's going to have a different association with those words, and that's going to be at play here. I understand that there is this notion that acceptance is sort of related to this idea of complacency or not trying, or sort of, not even caring. And that's not what we mean by acceptance and surrender and resistance or non-resistance. And we're going to discuss that. But I think it's just important to note that and acknowledge that there is this association with acceptance and passiveness, and that's not what we're suggesting. From our conversation this morning, we talk about this all the time to get a further and further grasp about it. The notion of acceptance requires intent and will from people to lean into the discomfort and to kind of melt into the current momentum. But all at once, it requires this ability to, within the current momentum, to sort of become one with it, i.e. not resist that current momentum. And so we're going to get into this discussion now of sort of surrendering to the circumstance. And Alex is going to share a metaphor on surfing, if you're cool with that. Just letting you know. we're going to share a metaphor, which isn't perfect because no metaphor can be exact necessarily. Everyone's going to interpret that differently. But this metaphor that sort of encompasses this idea of the dance between using our personal will to melt into momentum, and then once in that momentum, find release and find acceptance and non-resistance within that momentum, and sort of like both of those things happening at the same time.
Perfect setup. Loved it. Okay, so, you know, like Janey said, I think this is the analogy that we talked about that we felt was a really great fit. Again, like it's more of an idea. So just a reminder to not like necessarily hold on to the specifics of what we're talking about, but to take these ideas and to try them on for yourself and see how they fit with your beliefs and the things that you've experienced in your life. And so the analogy that we're going to be referencing a lot is about surfing. I don't know anyone else's experience with surfing, but mine has definitely been terrifying, liberating, like so many things all wrapped in one. And so in surfing, there is this constant element of uncertainty, right? Like you're getting on the water, the ocean is like this whole other universe that we don't know all of the answers to. And so as a surfer, it's like, okay, embracing like with intent and will, it's like there's this desire to ride a wave and to be in this moment of bliss and to be able to surrender to something that is so much bigger than ourselves, which is Mother Nature and this wave that can look very peaceful, but can also be dangerous. And so it's kind of like this, you know, it's two sides of the same coin. And so it's like, as if we're surfing through life, we're venturing into this land of the unknown, and it is uncertain. And with will and intent, we're riding these waves and standing up and learning to adapt and catch our balance if we're feeling like, you know, if the wave comes and a foot slips or a shark comes up, there's all these unexpected pieces to surfing. And it's this ability to be able to surrender to the process, but doing everything that we can to be in the moment and to physically be present, to mentally be able to talk to ourselves in a way that allows us to remain present and in a flow. There's a spiritual element of staying connected to something that's so much bigger than yourself. And while all of this is happening and how liberating it can feel, there's also this underlying thing of, I could fall off the surfboard. There's a very heavy current of water. I don't know what's underneath me. There's all these other elements. And so that is something that we're going to be talking about a lot. And yeah, if you've had experience in surfing, you could probably relate to some of those things. I know Janey and I, when we've talked about our experiences with water, this one felt the most true. Encompass all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, because the essence and the substance of water itself is so adaptable. It's like life itself and sort of the weight, like life itself is non-resistant. And so in order for us to sort of melt into that momentum, we sort of have to be non-resistant, but all at once, we have to use our will and our stability to stand on the surfboard. So it's like, if I was to maybe like sum that up, it's like the ocean is life. It's this unpredictable it's this unpredictable non-resistant substance. And our job as a human is to move through life, is to travel forward through life. Sometimes it's going to look like we're traveling forward, and sometimes it's going to look like we're falling a bunch in the same spot. But believe it or not, that's still traveling forward, because each time you fall and you fail, you learn what you need to do to move forward the next time, hopefully. But it's like, so if the ocean is life and that's unpredictable and uncertain, and we're the surfer, it's this balance or simultaneous act of using our will and our intent to paddle forward, and then using our strength and our will and our intent to stand up on the board at the right time that we believe is the most right. And then either we fall and we do it all again, or we actually stand up and then we match the momentum of life's current and life's wave. It's almost like we become one with the wave. And so as we're becoming one with the wave, even though there's a surrender to the speed and the momentum and the current of that wave, we're also simultaneously finding stability and using our muscular resistance within the non-resistance to stay on par with the wave. So it's this idea is complex because Alex is, as she said before, in our personal conversations, it's paradoxical. It's like it's both at once. It's our will and our intent to, and that application of moving and putting ourselves in motion, at the same time as accepting the current reality of the momentum that life is in this moment. And that's, from our understanding, sort of a setup to find the most peaceful approach forward in life versus continual perpetuation of suffering, because we're constantly resisting, the flow and the momentum of life itself, which is something beyond our control. As Alex said, it's something outside of the reach of something that we can navigate. Life is happening, with or without us. So using our intent and our will simultaneously to surrendering to the circumstance itself seems like the almost the best description that I could possibly find for acceptance and for non-resistance. The next sort of thing that we have, I guess what we could talk about, because is maybe the different feelings of peace within the different circumstances. So if the goal and the aim of trying to adopt the philosophy of non-resistance and acceptance and surrender within life, if the goal of that is to find inner peace, or as you've said before, Alex, like a true north, like a centeredness, if that true centeredness and that true north brings peace, otherwise known as balance to some people, and if that's the goal of practicing non-resistance, then perhaps it would make sense for us to discuss the scale of peace and how peace can feel different when you're riding a wave that maybe feels easy on a non-stormy day versus the peace that we might be able to find when we're getting absolutely rocked by a wave.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, totally. So it's like the peaceful can feel different based on the context of where you're at. And it's like some days if you're meditating under the trees, like that's amazing and that can be totally peaceful. But other times, yeah, when your life is getting rocked, sometimes it's like there's these little things that have, or little moments that appear and little opportunities to say, if we're surfing and we're talking about falling off the surfboard, it's like these little moments where it's like, I can come up from the water and catch my breath before the next wave comes. So it's like a moment to be able to realchemate. And in that moment, there's peace. And maybe that's enough peace to fuel the tank, like the soul tank of, being able to be resilient within this battle of uncertainty of what's coming next, of how am I going to get out of this? It's like finding those little tiny windows of peace and centeredness and stillness.
Right. So it's like, I guess one could probably agree that it's sometimes easier to find, I'm already seeing an argumentative voice as coming up with regards to the thing that I'm about to say. I was going to say one might, assume that it's easier to find peace sort of when you're under a tree and there's no distractions, and it's like the environment itself is peaceful and your life isn't being, your life isn't at stake, as it were. And there's many probably people that would agree that, yeah, it's easier to find peace in that space, but maybe some people would contend that and say, well, actually, that sounds boring, and my body might be hyperactive and my mind might be hyperactive in a state where there's nothing going on, and I might find less peace, and that's valid too. But I think the same goes for the alternative example, which is when you're getting, rocked by life or rocked by a wave. It's like I've heard some people say they've found more presence when they turn the volume all the way up versus turning the volume all the way down. And, you know, specifically the person that has said that before is an MMA fighter. He said that when he gets in the ring, you can't, like, there's something to be said about presence when there's no other distractions. Like, it helps you kind of access that space of presence. But there's something to also be said about, like, when you're about to get punched in the face, there's no way you can't be present to that. Like, you have to be. It's almost like the survival aspect also brings this presence to you. And then in those moments, both of those moments, you have the choice to either stay present and accept and embrace the reality, or resist it. And I think with getting rocked with a wave, it's like, you know, someone might ask, well, how do you like not resist that, right? And I think that if you've ever been in the ocean and ever been surprised by a really, really powerful wave, what you'll come to learn is that if you try and fight against it and try and figure out how to reorientate yourself and like turn yourself right side back up, you'll find that your muscles will get quite tired, and you might not have, as Alex said, enough like gas in the tank to come up for air just before the next wave comes and get pummeled again. And you know, hopefully that doesn't happen, but in my experience, getting rocked by a wave, it does happen. And it's when you get rocked by a wave, you either have to get, if it's rocking you enough, you're going to be completely disoriented, and you might only have time to come up for one breath before another one comes, so that you can then reorientate yourself and get back into the flow and the momentum again. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is finding non-resistance in that space is complete surrender to, it looks the same. It's complete surrender to something that's more powerful to you, and more powerful than you, and more out of your control than you could ever possibly imagine. And that non-resistance in that space could actually build more strength within you to move forward after that crazy experience. So yeah, there's non-resist, and so like then the peace found, the alleged peace found within the non-resistance in that circumstance, getting rocked by a wave, is going to feel different than the peace under the tree. In that circumstance, it might just feel like a release and a complete surrender to trust and faith that you're going to be able to make it out the other side. And that definitely correlates with mental health when we're getting rocked by depression and anxiety. There's a lot that could be said that correlates with that notion also.
Yeah, I love so many things that you said. And I'll say too that, like, in my own experience, like I said, I was a gymnast for 19 years. Somewhere in between those two, I left my sport and I went into diving for a year, and I was a competitive diver. And water is always one of these things that has terrified me. And one of my fears was when you're diving from like high, from big heights, you have to break the water. So you hold your hands like this, and sometimes you'll hear a big clap in the water, and that's literally the rip of the surface to kind of soften or create a little like a little doorway for your body to enter in. And what always scared me is that if I forgot for whatever reason, or didn't have enough time to break the water, my head could be the thing that breaks the water. And that could be enough to give a concussion, like disorient, whatever. And I remember my coach saying, if that happens, because if you're diving in head first, to totally surrender, because your body will float in the direction that is up. And even thinking that, I was like, oh my God. So, I only stayed in diving for a year. Like, it was way more terrifying for me than gymnastics ever was. However, it did teach me to surrender. And I do think that surrendering is a practice skill set of, I'm not intentionally diving with this purpose of hurting myself or getting lost in water. But should that happen, I know how to surrender and be confident enough in my skill set and the tools that I have in order for myself to survive. And that can be applied to surfing, that can be applied to life, like whatever that is. Being able to surrender and trust in something bigger when I've done everything that I could only for the current circumstances to still exist is something that I've had to practice physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a really intense story. Like I can only imagine how like I would have the same fear for sure. And I love that. Yeah, I love that sort of your coach was kind of like, if that happens, there's sort of like nothing else you can do but surrender. And surrender looks like giving into, yeah, the momentum of where the water will take you. And then hopefully, you know, you have the strength and you're not unconscious, and you can kind of like, you know, turn your body right side up so that you can get air, allegedly, when you float to the top, right? But that would require, yeah, these skills, as you said, and these strengths within your mindset, within your body, within your emotions, to be able to sort of navigate that situation as it occurred, which kind of leads us into this next category, and it's okay. So we've just said, you know, essentially practicing. So we've just said essentially like nothing is certain, and practicing non-resistance or acceptance or surrender to this uncertainty is possibly the best way that you can find to be at peace with the uncertainty. It's sort of like almost the best we can do to find certainty is set ourselves up so that we can actually find peace in whatever instance of uncertainty we're sort of faced with, in whatever wave we're faced with. And in addition, we've also said that acceptance is both a catch and release all at the same time. It's this will and this intent of creating motion, but it's also surrendering to the actual flow of life. Essentially, it's like being in a flow state. And so we've just said all that, but there's, to Alex's point, when we're in these circumstances that are completely out of our control, there's tools, physically, emotionally, and mentally. There's tools and ways that we can build resilience and build strength that allow us to prepare for worst case scenarios, you know, which we might still completely get rocked by an unknown wave. We might still completely get thrown off by uncertainty. I don't think there's any perfect way to prepare for it and perfect way to deal with it, but there are resilience methods and sort of these healthy coping mechanisms that we can adopt and attach to in a healthy way that provide a pseudo stability for ourselves. And I say pseudo stability, but I don't mean that to be negative. I mean that these healthy coping mechanisms and these lifestyle habits create a stability that we need in order to feel okay with being human and navigate our way through this uncertain, sort of arbitrary and ambiguous life. So within that, we're going to discuss some lifestyle habits that we think are helpful and that we think are useful, and you know, I'll bring up now again, if there's any questions or any thoughts to what we're saying, even if you want to challenge us, like there's so many different variables to consider with this conversation, and we want to make sure everybody's voice is heard. So yeah, please mention what you feel like mentioning. And I just see a question pop up here. Mickey says, yes, surrender is a skill that you can practice and prepare yourself for yourself physically, mentally, and spiritually, absolutely, and emotionally. So yeah, so we're going to get into that discussion about what are some positive things that we've brought into our life, and feel free to comment things that you've brought into your life that you found to be effective. Do you want to take over from here?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely say some things that I have found that have been very helpful for me. I think my first pillar that I go to is movement, and you and I are very aligned in that we both like to move intentionally. For a lot of my life, movement, I mean, it's always been a form of therapy, and up until 2 years ago, I wouldn't have defined it this way, but it has very much been an active meditation. Intentionally moving my body, be it through yoga or lifting weights or just walking. I go on Shri walks, which are like these beauty walks, and I pick something in nature that I feel like is beautiful, and I just take time to appreciate it. Like anything like that, I find is going back into nature is so healing. And I'll also say too that in the mindset space, I've learned so much also from stillness. So like the mindset and the movement piece, I feel like seated meditations were not really a thing for me up until 2 years ago. And I say that like, sitting down to actually meditate. When I was in my sports psychologist had me visualize, which in and of itself is somewhat of a meditation. But those practices have taught me so much of not only using movement as my only thing, being able to sit with myself has also taught me a whole new skill set that has kind of revealed itself. And surrendering to what I feel, all the restlessness and the insides that usually I can move out. And then now I'm having to use other tools like to breathe out. And visualize things that are coming in and moving emotion. So those two for me have been amazing and very healthy attachments. I found movement has in the past also been unhealthy for me. So I've had to work on reframing, but at this point in my life, it is a healthy attachment that I use as a tool for myself.
That's fantastic. And same, I can definitely take ownership of the fact that I've used movement as a punishment instead of a privilege in the past. And I talk about this, I'll go into M3, and there's so much that you can offer with the M3 theory as well. But I think that it for me, like in order to find the privilege of movement, it comes down to understanding the motive behind the movement. Like, what does my body need today? And then attaching that the movement to that, the motive of trying to serve that need. Like, okay, I need recovery. Well, I'm going to go for a walk, and that's the movement I'll do. Or even foam roll or mobility or something like that. Or, I'm feeling like really anxious and I have a ton of pent up energy and I just need to express and, burst power and do explosive movement and things like that. But doing explosive movement on a day that you need to recover and expecting yourself to meet those demands is then when it turns into a punishment. So I think, like, to your point, totally, guilty of using movement as a punishment or as something to hurt myself with. And I think that partially, or maybe majority for me, it just comes down to like understanding what the motive needs to be, or connecting a motive to a movement versus just doing it mindlessly.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's intentional movement, right? Going in with the intention of, it's beautiful.
It's super helpful. It's super helpful. It's just like, it makes me feel successful whenever I'm executing movement. Like, to go for a long walk on a day that I feel like I need to not do a HIIT class or whatever makes me feel successful. It's like, I moved today and I did what my body wanted me to do. And I served myself. I didn't sort of make things worse or whatever. It kind of makes me feel more productive, I guess, when I'm connecting a motive to, or at least adhering to sort of what my body needs and creating a motive for the movement based on that. So for those of you who don't know what I mean by M3, within Fierce Academy, there's 3 sort of pillars of offerings that I like to coach people on, and in terms of resilience methods and healthy lifestyle habits. And those are movement, music, and mindset, not necessarily in that order. And Alex and I, we just sort of both confirmed how important we believe movement is. There's so many reasons for that, beyond physical aesthetics. It balances the nervous system and the hormones and helps us expel pent up energy and sweat out toxins and things like that. But it really is such a healing tool and a healing, let's say, attachment to sort of adopt into your daily regimen or most, at least frequently throughout your week. Within the pillar of music, and also I gave an entire sort of hour lecture or discussion on M3 way back in the beginning of this quarantine, and it's in the archives of Blue Matter, so you can go and check that out if you want to sort of see the whole thing more in depth. But With respect to music, when I say that to people, sometimes they're not 100% sure how to take it because they're not necessarily musicians or singers themselves, and obviously I am. But what I mean by adopting music is also being intentional with your music. Understanding what type of music makes you feel good and uplifted, what type of music maybe you need in order to unlock the valve of your emotions in order to release grief. Maybe what type of music pumps you up to go a little bit harder at the end of your workout, or what type of music relaxes you. So to be intentional with the type of music that you want to bring into your life to make you feel a certain way, like understanding how different music makes you feel, and then choosing the music that you want to listen to make you feel a certain way, but also being really conscious of lyrics. If we think about lyrics as a modern day mantra, we can think about the fact that when those lyrics get stuck in our head, if they're saying things that are negative, or there's a lot of swearing or whatever, too much aggression, and that's not necessarily what we need for the rest of our day. Like listening to aggressive music, maybe that makes you feel more connected and more seen and heard for a moment. But if it gets trapped in your head and you try to move through your day and put yourself in a different vibration, then that lyric is going to be something that kind of brings you back into a vibration that you might not have intended. So we have to be cautious of the fact that lyrics are they're a modern day mantra, and we understand, as Gandhi says, like, you know, what we think, we speak. What we speak, we sort of, our behavior kind of adapts. I'm obviously not saying his quote exact here, but it's sort of this philosophy that like the seed of our reality exists first in our mind, and our mind affects our speech, and our speech affects our beliefs, and our beliefs affect our action, and our action creates our reality. So it's just to be very, very intentional with music, and, you know, even try out practicing humming to one note. See how that changes your nervous system. See how that creates harmony within your physical, emotional, and mental dispositions. Just try it. Even if you're not a singer, what does it feel like in your body to produce sound, or to harmonize with one note, like binaural beat style, harmonize with one note that you hear from music? Test that out, see what it feels like. Mindset is the third M, and yeah, Alex, definitely.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's a group called Beautiful Chorus, and they have amazing mantras on many topics, and you can literally sing with them. Mm-hmm. And so if this is something that you do want to explore, Beautiful Chorus is a great place to start. There's lots of topics there.
I love that you just said that. You sent them to me, and they've been such an influence on, like, if I actually was singing them today when I was doing the dishes. Like, it's actually been a sound and those mantras that they've provided have been like a thing that I revert to when I'm feeling anxiety now, because I sing anyway when I feel anxious. Like, it's something that helps calm me down regardless of whether I'm on key or not. It's about the self-produced sound, and I started singing them today. I was feeling anxious and overwhelmed, and I started singing I Am Everything I Want to Be, you know, whatever that one is called. I
love that you do that. Because I do that. So, like, if I'm in a place where I can't move, like if I'm in the car and I have a little bit of a drive, sometimes I'll just turn one on and I'll just sing it. And like, no one can hear me. I'm in the safe space of my car, and then I can just say things out loud. And like, even like the more I repeat it, sometimes my mind will just go, and then I'm like, okay, I'm back.
Totally. It's amazing how powerful self-produced sound is, and those words, like the intention, the sound, the words themselves, the melody, the harmony that their voices create together. Like, it's amazingly healing. And there's a ton of science to back this up in terms of how music affects our emotions and our immune system. Like, this isn't news, but it's just a kind of, I don't think it's a thing that many people are thinking about. And I don't think that people are maybe aware of how profound media and music affects our mindset and our mood. Just in the same way that biochemistry, you know, is affected by the food we eat. It's like the media we consume is affecting our mind and our mood. So I love that you just said that. Thank you for bringing that up. It's Beautiful Chorus. We can chap it in the Mickey. It's a beautiful chorus. They're on Spotify, and if you type in their name, there's their albums will show up. There's actually one called Wheels of Light that Alex and I, thanks for typing that in, Alex. There's the Wheels of Light are is the album that Alex and I are talking about right now. But they have many great songs. So what we've just described is movement affects the physical body, and it, affects the emotions and the nervous system and whatnot also. But the sort of intent behind movement is to take care of the physical body. From my perspective, the intent to listen to music and bring music in intentionally in your life, that's to adhere to and affect the emotional body. And with mindset, that's the connection to taking care of and adopting lifestyle habits that are that adhere to the mental body. And so, let's dive into that. Or do you want to start with sort of, you already said that finding stillness and practicing what I'm assuming to be sort of a mindfulness practice that has greatly affected your mindset. Are there any other methods that you love?
I mean, I love talking to you. That's a way for me to I think one of the most valuable I guess coping mechanisms as I go through life is I like people that I can talk about perspectives with. And so I like to sit with myself and stay in the question. Is what I'm experiencing, is the story that I'm telling myself, is that the truth? And usually the answer is, well, it could be the truth. Something else could also be the truth. And so I value the self-time of like writing out different perspectives and different stories, reversing stories on myself. I do this a lot when I feel like I'm going into almost like a place of victimizing. Oftentimes I'll turn the story around on myself and see if there was a place that maybe I self-abandoned, or where can I show up for me? How can I love me? How can I give myself time? What fuels me, like being out in nature? So it's that reflective time, also like these great conversations that we have where it's like, you can validate my feelings, you can validate my thought process, you can introduce other perspectives. There's a sense of community and it's very much mindful community, people that I'm intentionally bringing into my world, intentional relationships that I'm nurturing to help me grow mentally and spiritually, emotionally, and all the things. So writing, stillness and meditation, intentional conversations. I think books are great too. It's just another way to introduce more perspectives. But I'd say that meditation, our talks, and reflection is works the best for me.
Same. I have to agree with everything you just said. Like within the category of mindset, the three most common ones are to sort of suggest to people are meditation, which is a slew of categories. It's breathing meditation, mindfulness meditation, like creative visualization, like there's many types of meditation, right? And then, journaling is another sort of lifestyle habit that I like to share with people. And again, so many different methods. You can do morning pages to expel sort of and create a flow state for the mind, like, and expel all these like random thoughts that are bouncing around your skull. You can do self-confession to sort of take ownership of shame that you might be harvesting inside of you, so that it can kind of stop the growth of shame. You can do self-discovery and self-reflection, as you said. Reading books is absolutely an amazing sort of method in expanding the mind, especially when it's material that's sort of like just beyond your grasp of it's not easy material. It's something that causes you to really reach and stretch. But to validate, what you said about our conversations, I feel the same. And I wholeheartedly, I'm so grateful for the community of people that I've brought into my life that are so mindful and aware and are able to, the best they can, try and hold this unbiased perspective and space for me as I work through troubles or as I question myself. It's this kind of space of allowing me to speak my truth, as you said, and sort of maybe even go fully into my anger and sort of validate that story and make me feel seen and heard, but also have this sense of like compassion and grace for the whatever the fact that I need to be angry or upset or lost or confused. So I wholeheartedly believe, the same as you in terms of like community is, it's just like community is a soul resilience method in a sense, right? And but also just so helpful for mental health and mindset and whatnot. So
I have like my soul tribe. I call them my soul tribe, like my people who just understand my soul, that I can speak. We talk in our language in a way that, and when I try and have conversations, or if I've ever had with the intention of going deep in conversations with other people, there's just other people who can't meet me there, but the people in my soul tribe can meet me there. And I also, the one thing I wanted to add on is that meditation and journaling, and like we've talked about this, it's hard for me. Like movement isn't hard for me. Even if I don't want to do it, I'll be like, I'm just going to do it. And I know that I'm going to feel better. Meditation, it's like, I don't want to do it. And then I'll find every excuse in the book to not do it, because being still is still new for me. Like I moved my body every day. I lived in movement every day since I was, 3. So the stillness piece is still something that I'm working on. And it's important for me to consistently show up for myself when I don't want to do it, because it is the training grounds for me to go up against something as big as uncertainty. As the waves of my life come and go, it's like, if I only stick with movement, if for whatever reason, like knock on wood, if movement isn't accessible to me, I can kind of lean into stillness because I've practiced that too. And it kind of creates this like holistic foundation of like, I don't have a toolbox. I have a warehouse of tools. Like, so I'm ready. Like I'm train for everything and be ready for anything. It's like I continue to do the training for the things that I don't even want, that are hard for me, like meditation, even if it's 15 minutes a day.
Totally. Yeah, that's a huge statement. First of all, I think that like I wonder if meditation and stillness isn't maybe hard for most people. Like even if you're you're not an athlete and you're sort of like main MO isn't like movement when all the time, maybe that might not be your comfort zone, but that doesn't mean still that stillness is your comfort zone, right? Just because movement isn't like this massive part of your life. So I wonder if meditation and mindfulness and stillness and whatnot are sort of hard for most people or many people, because it involves sort of unraveling and peeling back the layers of your unconsciousness and finding, facing things that are scary. And so it's perfectly human and perfectly reasonable to be sort of resistant to that. But I think that as we walk forward through life, I don't want to say we as a whole, but I think for me, as I walk forward through life, I see the benefits in sort of kind of just saying to myself, like, I understand that you are feeling resistant towards this, but we're going to do it anyway. And that kind of, I think for me, like, it kind of comes down to courage. It's like there are times to be comfortable, I think, and there are times to be courageous. And I think for me, my North Star is when it comes to the choice of being my authentic self, and if my authentic self means that I need to face some darkness, that's so be it. It's like when it comes to being my authentic self, I think for me, I'm always going to attempt to choose courage, because I think that that's going to lead me to a path of growth. Again, there are times to be comfortable. I'm not negating that, but I think when it comes to having the choice or the option to be your authentic self or not to be, like, again, to see your darkness or not to see your darkness, to use your voice or not to use your voice. Everybody has their own version of what authenticity means, and the appropriate times to act in courage around that. But I think for me, it comes down to choosing courage as often as possible, so that I can find growth within my authentic self. So I guess all that being said is I'm just validating that I think that it's tough for most people. And I think that there's a level of courage that we need to choose when it comes to trying to find growth. It's also okay to choose comfort at times, but there are times that it would be in our best interest to choose courage.
Yeah, and I mean, to bring all of that full circle, I feel like surfers have courage every single time they get on the ocean because they don't know what is coming. And it's like with all of us, I think that there's in life, like there's elements of things that we are a little bit afraid of that we constantly have to do. Like uncertainty is inevitable.
Right.
Yeah, nothing is certain. We're always going to be a little bit afraid. Something might seem dangerous, and it also might be so liberating. And so all we can do is use the skills that we have in our tool sheds to, be able to, get in the arena and do the things that make our soul feel alive. And like, as the waves come crashing and as, we fail or we fall, coming back to those foundations of mindfulness, mindset, movement, music, whatever those things are for you, because that's the foundation. Like that, you can always create a foundation for yourself in the face of any kind of uncertainty or anything. You always have a home, your inner peace, your North Star, whatever that is for you.
Right. And that doesn't negate the fear. It doesn't take it away. It doesn't mean it's not going to be a wave that rocks you upside down and sideways, but it does mean that you possibly have more resilience to those waves and more management of your physical, emotional, and mental within that space of being rattled. Should we read some questions, and then there's a quote that definitely we should read before we go?
Yeah, let's do it.
So Mickey says, I enjoy art therapy, creative activities. It's good for everyone. Absolutely. I just want to say, you don't have to call yourself an artist to be creative. Like, we're all manifestations of, I believe of the universe. We're all creative beings, and we all have the ability to be creative if we have the courage to show creative expression in whatever way that is. Maybe it means cooking dinner. Maybe it means building a shed for your tools. Maybe it means humming, right? Like, creative expression exists in all of us. And I think that we as beings by default are creative expression. So art therapy and creative activities, it's amazing. And I would just even add, like, therapy in general can be an incredibly creative process. Like with, therapy in general, there's many types of therapy, but like psychotherapy, for example, or somatic, like whatever the therapy type is, all of them can really be a creative process. And you sort of discussing and sharing, your internal ideas and your internal state of being with someone else and conceptualizing it. So yeah, therapy is a good one.
Great one.
MB says, such great reminders that these skills can and possibly need to be practiced all the time. Yeah, consistency is key. Not just during this quarantine, learning to ride the waves. Thanks, MB. I like your little emojis.
Me too. And like, there's always other people surfing too, like we're just a bunch of surfers and we're all trying to ride our own waves. Community, right? It's like we can all get together and talk about all of the things.
Totally. You guys, thanks so much for showing up. If there's anybody that wants to share any last insight or questions, we're here for you. Luckily, this won't boot us off at exactly 1 hour like Instagram does. I'm sure you guys are getting sick of hearing us continuing to talk and just Instagram shutting us down like mid-sentence by now. Yeah. Ending like this, like, okay, well, we have 1 second left. Like, this is all we've got to say goodbye. Thank you guys for showing up. Been a great conversation. This is super inspiring and thought-provoking for us. Al, if you have anything else to share before I share the Bruce Lee quote, like, please chime in.
No, I'm honestly like I love chatting with you, and I've loved the community that you've introduced me to. And thank you to Blue Matter for being a platform for these kinds of topics and conversations. And I commend everyone who has taken an hour out of their day to potentially plant new seeds and other perspectives to be open to, because I feel like, you know, the more lucid humans where we don't have all the right answers are beautiful people to talk to. So thank you for being here.
Love that. As you say, staying in the question. I love when you say staying in the question. It's such a great aim, I think. And it's related, I feel, to this entire conversation and to Bruce Lee's quote, which inspired the title, Be Like Water. He says, be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put water into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.